On Christmas Eve in 1971, at Jorge Chávez International Airport in Peru's capital Lima, crowds bustled about in a busy atmosphere. With Christmas approaching, many people were rushing home to reunite with their families. On the tarmac, LANSA, Líneas Aéreas Nacionales S.A.A., Flight 508, was making final preparations for takeoff. The aircraft was a Lockheed L-188A Electra, a large turboprop passenger plane manufactured by Lockheed. The flight was departing from Lima to Pucallpa, the final stop in the Amazon rainforest, the region's largest city. The route would cross the world's longest mountain range, the Andes, and pass over the vast Amazon rainforest. Flight 508 had operated this route countless times with an experienced crew. However, a tragedy was quietly looming. The day of departure and passengers. December 24th, 1971 was a Friday, also Christmas Eve. At 10:05 a.m., passengers began boarding Flight 508. In total, there were 92 people on board, including 86 passengers and 6 crew members. Among the passengers was a beautiful young girl named Juliane Margaret Beate Koepcke, later Diller after marriage, who was 17 years old at the time. She wore a floral dress, simple sandals, and her long blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders, looking particularly graceful. She was traveling with her mother, Maria Koepcke, to Pucallpa to reunite with her father, Hans Wilhelm Koepcke, and celebrate Christmas. Initially, the mother and daughter had planned to return home 5 days earlier, but Juliane wanted to attend her high school graduation ceremony, so they postponed the trip. Her mother could only secure tickets for the day before Christmas. Before that, Juliane's father had advised against flying with LANSA due to its poor safety record, with numerous mechanical issues and accidents in recent years. However, with the holiday approaching, tickets were scarce, and only this airline had availability. Juliane's mother didn't want to delay further, thinking the flight was short and they'd arrive soon. After boarding, Juliane and her mother sat in row 19 on the right side. Juliane was in seat 19F by the window, where she could clearly see the right wing. Her mother was in the middle seat 19E, while seat 19D by the aisle was occupied by an obese man. The flight began. At exactly noon, the plane taxied down the runway and took off on time. The journey from Lima to Pucallpa would take just 1 hour. Juliane was in high spirits, gazing out the window at the scenery below while chatting happily with her mother. After 25 minutes, the flight attendants began serving lunch. Sunlight streamed into the cabin as passengers leisurely enjoyed their meals. After some time in the air, the plane climbed to an altitude of about 21,000 feet, 6,400 meters, over the Andes. Soon after, the plane entered a cloud bank, obscuring the ground view, and the aircraft began to shake violently. Juliane wasn't concerned, but her mother seemed tense, repeatedly looking out the window and hoping to escape the clouds soon. The crew kept broadcasting safety announcements to calm the frightened passengers. The man in seat 19D fell into a deep sleep after eating. As the turbulence intensified, the cabin filled with passengers' screams. Luggage started falling from the overhead bins. The sleeping man was jolted awake by a falling suitcase, gripping his armrests tightly with a terrified expression and letting out incomprehensible shouts. The tragedy unfolds. After crossing the Andes, the plane reached the skies over the Amazon rainforest. The weather remained poor, with thunderstorms growing more intense. The plane seemed to be flying right through the storm area. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning flashed outside the window. Juliane grew uneasy and saw a blinding light on the right wing. Lightning had struck the right wing, and flames quickly erupted. Juliane panicked and grabbed her mother's hand tightly. Other passengers screamed repeatedly. Some closed their eyes in prayer, while others clung to their loved ones. Juliane's mother said in despair, "This is the end. Everything is over." No sooner had she spoken than the plane began plummeting rapidly. Oxygen masks dropped from above. Items from the overhead bins tumbled everywhere, and everyone screamed as the cabin descended into chaos. Juliane closed her eyes, her mind going blank. Suddenly, she was hurled out of the plane by a powerful force, spinning in the air along with her row of seats. The seat belt held her securely in place, but her mother and the obese man were nowhere to be seen. At that moment, the plane had disintegrated in mid-air at an altitude of about 10,000 feet, 3,000 meters. Juliane had no time for fear, feeling only dizziness and nausea before gradually losing consciousness and passing out. Waking up in the jungle. After an unknown amount of time, Juliane gradually regained consciousness. She was on the ground, soaked and covered in mud, with her right sandal missing. She was lying under the row of seats in the tropical rainforest, struggling to breathe. She tried to lift her head but felt dizzy and failed after several attempts. Juliane realized she had just survived a plane crash, falling from the sky. Her mother was missing and likely dead. She felt heartbroken and utterly helpless, as if abandoned by the world. She tried to survey her surroundings, but her nearsighted glasses were lost, and her left eye was badly swollen, making everything blurry. After a while, she crawled out from under the seats, but immediately felt everything go black when trying to stand, forcing her to lie back down. After resting for some time, she tried sitting up again. She had a broken right collarbone, a deep wound on her right arm, an injury on her left calf, and a ruptured knee ligament, but none were fatal. However, she was too dizzy to stand, symptoms of a concussion. She called out for her mother, but received no response after shouting for a long time. The forest was eerily quiet, with bird calls and rustling leaves sounding so clear. Juliane felt immense self-blame. If not for her wanting to attend the graduation, the family would have reunited days earlier. And now the crash had made everything irreparable. The more she thought about it, the sadder she became, and she couldn't help but cry. Family background and experience. Juliane was born in Germany into a highly educated family. Her parents were renowned scientists dedicated to studying animals in the tropical rainforest. They brought their daughter to settle in distant Peru. In 1968, they established a simple biological research station called Penguana in the rainforest, a small hut built from wood and dry grass. Though conditions were harsh, the couple felt fulfilled pursuing their passion. Juliane stayed with her parents, living a life isolated from the world. Influenced by them, she gained knowledge of various plants and animals in the tropical rainforest. Later, Juliane left the jungle to attend high school in Lima, with her mother accompanying her for care. Her father moved to Pucallpa alone, occasionally returning to Penguana for research. After the crash, Juliane forced herself to calm down. She vaguely remembered the plane had just crossed the Andes and reached the Amazon skies before the incident. So her current location should be in the Amazon rainforest, near Puerto Inca, Peru. To survive, she had to make the most of available resources. The day after the crash, Juliane struggled to her feet and began searching through scattered debris for usable items. She found a bag of candy, precious supply, and a piece of bread that was soaked and covered in mud. She tried biting into it, but the taste was unbearable, so she discarded it. Meanwhile, news of the LANSA Flight 508 crash spread quickly. Many passengers' families rushed to the airport upon hearing. The airline only knew the last signal was shortly after crossing the Andes. Facing questions from relatives, the company could only reassure them, saying helicopters had been dispatched to search the crash site and look for survivors as much as possible. But deep down, everyone knew the chances of survival were slim. At that moment, Juliane in the rainforest was unaware of the outside situation. Barefoot on one foot, she trudged along, searching for her mother. The jungle was full of mosquitoes, and with only a thin dress, her exposed skin soon became swollen and red from bites. But for her, this wasn't the biggest issue. She had no idea of her exact location. Going the wrong way could mean losing any chance of survival. The rainforest was filled with unknown dangers, where a single mistake could be fatal. She suddenly recalled her father's advice. If trapped in the rainforest, the first thing to do is find a river and follow the water flow downstream to lower elevations, where there might be human settlements. Persevering could lead to rescue. Additionally, the rainforest vegetation is extremely dense, with thick vines intertwining in impenetrable bushes, making progress difficult without tools in many areas. However, following a river is relatively easier, at least avoiding being blocked by dense foliage and reducing the risk of getting lost. River water also provides drinking water and possibly fruits or small animals for food. With this in mind, Juliane began searching for a river. After walking for a while, she actually heard the sound of flowing water and followed it to find a small stream. This boosted her confidence, and despite her pain, she quickly followed the flow. Gradually, the stream's flow increased, turning into a larger river. Juliane took each step carefully to avoid slipping or tripping on vines. Her right foot without a shoe was pained by sharp rocks and thorns, making walking even more laborious. When tired, she found a relatively flat spot to rest. When hunger became unbearable, she ate a piece of candy for energy. At night, she sought a relatively safe place to sleep, avoiding damp lowlands or ant-infested tree roots. She covered herself with large leaves. The night was filled with various animal calls, keeping Juliane on constant alert. During rain, she shivered from the cold, often enduring until morning when the sun rose, allowing a brief rest before continuing. Survival journey. During this time, Juliane often heard helicopters overhead, likely rescue teams. Excited, she waved her arms toward the sky, but the tall trees and dense canopy in the rainforest blocked the view, so the helicopters couldn't see her. In this vast, endless rainforest, Juliane felt incredibly small. Even with helicopters directly above, she couldn't attract attention. Without fire-making tools, she couldn't create smoke signals for help. On the third day trapped in the rainforest, Juliane spotted a charred aircraft engine in the riverbed, with scattered wreckage nearby. This confirmed the plane had disintegrated in midair, with debris spread over a wide area, making it hard for rescuers to find survivors. On the fourth day, Juliane stumbled upon another row of seats. Approaching, she saw bodies on them, clearly deceased. Due to the massive impact from the high-altitude fall, the seats were embedded about a meter into the ground, and with the hot weather, decomposition had set in, emitting a foul odor. Some had their heads downward, with most of the body buried in mud and only feet exposed. Juliane was terrified. She picked up a branch to flip over a foot and saw red nail polish, confirming it wasn't her mother, as her mother didn't wear nail polish. She believed her mother might still be alive, perhaps like her, searching for a way out somewhere in the rainforest. On the fifth day trapped in the rainforest, Juliane felt ravenously hungry. She regretted discarding that bread earlier. Though dirty and wet, it would have been invaluable in such conditions. Continuing downstream, along the river, offered a chance to escape, but dangers lurked constantly. Piranhas and caimans hid in the water, requiring extra caution with every step. Fortunately, Juliane knew about these animals' habits from living in the jungle with her parents and encountering various wildlife. Though dangerous, piranhas and caimans usually don't attack humans unless provoked. Compared to these, Juliane was more worried about stingrays, a flat-bodied cartilaginous fish with a venomous stinger connected to a barb at the tail. When threatened, they release venom via the stinger. Typically, they hide in the riverbed mud, invisible to the naked eye. Stepping on one could cause swelling, muscle spasms, severe pain, and even life-threatening issues. When crossing water, Juliane used a stick to probe ahead, poking the river bottom before each step to ensure safety. Besides stingrays, there were leeches in the water. Juliane had a wound on her left leg, and leeches often attached to it, hard to remove. Increasing challenges. As time passed, Juliane's body grew weaker. She walked non-stop each day, with her only food being that bag of candy. Along the way, she saw Brazil nut trees, one of the Amazon rainforest's largest trees, with nuts rich in fats and proteins. But the shells were extremely hard, and without tools, Juliane couldn't access the kernels, so she had to give up and keep going. On the 7th day trapped in the rainforest, Juliane was horrified to discover maggots wriggling in her right arm wound, larvae of botflies that parasitize wounds, feeding on living tissue. Juliane felt nauseous and tried pulling them out, but the more she tugged, the deeper they burrowed, causing waves of pain that forced her to stop. She could only let them be and quickened her pace, hoping for quick rescue as worsening infection could threaten her life. On the 10th day trapped in the rainforest, Juliane's body was nearing its limit, feeling exhausted. Her feet were swollen and pale from prolonged soaking in water, and combined with hunger and wound infection, she moved slower and slower. In the evening, she reached a clearing by the river and lay down, her consciousness fading. In a daze, she thought she saw a white boat. At first, she dismissed it as a hallucination, but the boat's outline became clearer, slowly drifting toward her with the current. Juliane mustered her strength to stand and approached the boat, confirming it was real. This meant people lived nearby. Hope ignited in her heart. She considered stealing the boat to float downstream out of the rainforest, but decided against it. Looking around, Juliane spotted a 3-meter-high embankment by the river, with a narrow path that seemed man-made. So she laboriously climbed the embankment and followed the path forward. Finally, before dark, she saw a small hut. The hut was rudimentary, with walls pieced together from rough wood and a roof covered in palm leaves. Scattered in front were some firewood and old fishing nets. Juliane approached the hut, but found no one inside, only a boat engine wrapped in plastic film and a can of gasoline. It appeared the hut was used for storing items and temporary rest. At the hut, Juliane planned to rest there for the night and leave at dawn. Seeing the gasoline, she suddenly recalled when her parents lived in the rainforest. Their pet dog had been infested with botfly larvae, and her father poured gasoline on the wound. Soon, the larvae couldn't stand the smell and emerged on their own. With this in mind, Juliane grabbed the gasoline, gritted her teeth, and poured it on her right arm wound. An intense burning sensation hit immediately, making her cry out in pain. Though painful, the method worked. Soon, the larvae in her skin started wriggling out one by one. Juliane removed about 35 of them. Afterward, she noticed several poison dart frogs in the corner of the hut. These brightly colored, highly toxic frogs secrete a poison from their skin that can quickly paralyze predators. In the past, indigenous people captured poison dart frogs and coated arrowheads with their toxins for hunting. Juliane was starving. Though she knew poison dart frogs were inedible, she couldn't resist trying to catch them. Fortunately, she was too weak, and the small, agile frogs easily escaped, so she caught none. In hunger and exhaustion, she fell into a deep sleep. Rescue. The next morning, the 11th day, Juliane groggily heard voices speaking. Opening the hut door, she saw 3 men heading toward the hut. They were local loggers speaking Spanish. Juliane had learned Spanish from her father, and could communicate normally with them. Upon learning of Juliane's ordeal, the three were shocked and immediately took her back to their logging camp, providing water, food, and medicine. Thus, after enduring 11 days of life and death trials in the Amazon rainforest, Juliane miraculously survived. After resting for a day, the three loggers drove a boat to take Juliane to Ternavista in 11 hours. Local residents, upon hearing, offered help, and a pilot voluntarily flew a helicopter to transport Juliane to a hospital in Pucallpa for treatment. Juliane's father, upon learning his daughter was alive, had already rushed to the hospital to wait. When father and daughter met, they embraced and wept uncontrollably. After examination, doctors found Juliane had a broken right collarbone, deep cuts on her right arm and left calf, a ruptured knee ligament, an injured left eye, and a concussion from head impact. But for someone who fell from 10,000 feet, surviving was already a miracle. After a period of treatment, Juliane recovered and was discharged. News of her survival spread like wildfire, leaving many in disbelief. Reasons for survival. Experts, after analysis, believed Juliane survived the plane's mid-air disintegration for several reasons. First, when the plane broke apart, Juliane was strapped to a row of seats by her seatbelt, and during the fall, the seats acted like a parachute. Second, during her descent, she was in the storm's center, where updrafts slowed her fall speed. Third, the landing site had dense vegetation that provided cushioning. Under these coincidences, Juliane avoided fatal injuries. Her personal experience living in the tropical rainforest also greatly aided her subsequent survival. After recovering, Juliane assisted the search team in locating the crash site. Her mother's body was found on January 12, 1972. Evidence showed that at least 14 people, including the captain, initially survived the crash, but regrettably, they all perished while awaiting rescue. Juliane was the sole survivor of LANSA Flight 508. Cause of the accident and aftermath. The accident was closely linked to crew operational errors. At the time, the plane was at 21,000 feet, flying into a thunderstorm area with some turbulence. To avoid delaying the holiday flight, the pilots risked continuing through the storm, ultimately leading to a lightning strike that caused the right wing to detach and the fuselage to catch fire. LANSA's reputation was utterly damaged, with the public seriously questioning its safety management and operations. Peruvian authorities revoked the airline's operating license on January 4, 1972. Later life. Juliane returned to Germany, graduating with a bachelor's in biology from the University of Kiel in 1980 and earning her PhD from Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich in 1987. Thesis on bats in tropical rainforests. She married Erich Diller in 1989. She worked as a mammologist, specializing in bats, and librarian at the Bavarian State Collection of Zoology in Munich. She took over Penguana in 2000, after her father's death, promoting Amazon rainforest conservation. Achievements. Memoir, When I Fell from the Sky, 2011, Corrine Literature Prize winner. Documentary, Wings of Hope, 1998, directed by Werner Herzog. Film Miracles Still Happen, 1974. Awarded a Peruvian medal in 2019 for conservation contributions.